The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderwoman Young, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderman Wessels, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Florida, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Schmid, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed,
Here.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Young, Alderman Villa, Alderman Wessels, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Cone, Alderman Carter, 24 present.
Quorum being present, I'll ask everyone in the chambers and the galleries who's able to stand to please rise for prayer. Giving all honor to God, Almighty God, source of all authority, we humbly ask guidance in our deliberations and wisdom in our conclusions. We also thank you for the Cardinals' victory. Amen. Introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I'd like to have for my honored guest today, Ronnie Auer, who took off last week. That's not allowable.
Yeah.
And go Cardinals.
All right. Alderman from 24.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Joe Wilson from SLU Law is back today.
Alderman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I would like to have as my special guest today Anthony Lancia with the AGC and David Holmes of Plumbers and Pipe Fitters.
Alderman from the 23rd.
Yes, I'd like to have as my special guest Gary Otten from the Painters and Celeste Reeder from the Realtors.
Alderman from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to introduce with us today Sergeant Justin Johnson, who is the Neighborhood Ownership Model Liaison Supervisor.
Thank you. Welcome aboard. Any further? Alderman from the 14th.
I'd like to have as my special guest today Charles Bryson from the Mayor's Office and Gary Otten from the Plumbers, and not the Plumbers, the Painters District Council number 2. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman from the 22nd.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my special guest Mr. Leroy Grant with Grant's Communications.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Any further inductions? Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to welcome my state representative, Jacob Hummel, and Sarah Wood Martin this morning.
All right, welcome, Jake. Jake, thanks for all the work you do at the Capitol on behalf of the residents here in the city of St. Louis. Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 10th, like to wrap us up?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. As we gather here on October 4th, this is a day famous for many things. Actually, the first day in 1957 that Leave It to Beaver aired, starring Joe Rohde. Also, this is National Pat Yourself on the Back Day, also known as Joe Vaccaro Day. Thank you.
Also, one of our colleagues, Alderman Moore, was in a car accident, so please offer your silent prayers to him for his speedy recovery, because we need him back at the board as soon as possible. Alderman from the 13th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move for our approval of the minutes of the September 20th meeting.
Moved by the Alderman from the 13th. Entertain a second on it. Seconded by the Alderman from the 24th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in sections A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in all aldermen's
We
mailboxes.
dispense with line items 7 through 10. First reading of board bills.
Board Bill 191, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to enter into and execute a supplemental agreement to the airport aid agreement for air service promotion between the city and Missouri Highways
Can we have some order?
and Transportation Commission, which was authorized by City Ordinance 68559, the supplemental agreement containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 192, sponsored by Alderman Schmidt, and ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of the Department of Human Services, St. Louis Area on Agency, to accept a grant award from the Missouri Alliance of Area Agencies in the amount of $64,936 and to expend those funds for Navigator Project Services, appropriating said funds and authorizing the Director of the Department of Human Services to expend such funds as permitted by the notice of the grant award and grant award agreement and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 193, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, and ordinance adopting the International Fire Code for 2009 edition with changes, including the appendix, chapters B, C, and as the fire code of the city, and containing a penalty clause, a savings clause, a severability clause, and an emergency clause. Board Bill 194, sponsored by Alderman Villa, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service, establishing the Public Works and Improvement Project for the South Broadway Streetscape Project Phase 2, involving various roadway infrastructure improvements and enhancement for the Curtis Street to the existing bridge over River de Pere Channel, containing a public work emergency clause. Board Bill 195, sponsored by Alderman Moore, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service, establishing a public work and improvement project for the Newstead area improvements involving various roadway infrastructure improvements and enhancements from the St. Louis Avenue to Natural Bridge Avenue, containing a public work emergency clause. Board Bill 196, sponsored by Alderwoman Flowers, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service, establishing a public work and improvement project for the North Broadway improvements involving various roadway infrastructure improvements and enhancements from the Thrush Avenue to Walter Avenue, containing a public work emergency clause. Board Bill 197, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service, establishing a public works project for the traffic management enhancement Phase 2, involving the purchase and installation of software and equipment upgrades to the city's traffic operations center located at the street department on Hampton Avenue, and containing a public work emergency clause. Board Bill 198, sponsored by Alderman Wells, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing the mayor to submit the 2014 annual plan to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development as required to apply for funding under the Federal Community Block Grant, Home Investment Partnership, Emergency Solutions Grant, and Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS Entitlement Programs, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 199, sponsored by Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderman Wessels, Boyd, and Williamson, an ordinance adopting and approving an amendment to the Northside Regeneration Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Plan, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 200, sponsored by Alderwoman Hubbard, Hubbard and Alderman Wessels, Boyd, and Williamson, and ordinance authorizing the execution of an amended and restated redevelopment agreement between the city and Northside Regeneration containing a severability clause. Board Bill 201, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, President Reed, Aldermen and Alderwomen, Alderman Arnowitz, Florida, Wessels, Carter, Vaccaro, Ogilvy, and Schmidt, an ordinance pertaining to certain duties, obligations, and procedures of the Preservation Board, repealing Section 4 of Ordinance 64689 and acting a new section in lieu thereof to remove the exception of any improvement of property owned or controlled by the Board of Education and containing an emergency clause. That's the extent of our first reading.
Reference to committee.
To the Transportation Committee, Board Bill 191. To the Health Committee, Board Bill 192. To the Public Safety Committee, Board Bills 193 and 201. And to the Streets Committee, Board Bills 194, 195, 196, and 197. To the Housing Committee, Board Bills 198, 199, and 200. That's the extent of reference to committees.
Second reading.
Following board bill was reported out of the Ways and Means Committee, Board Bill 147, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, President Reed, and Alderman French, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment authorizing an amendment to the city annual operating budget ordinance 69432 pertaining to municipal general revenue appropriations for services to be consolidated as a result of local control of the police department and containing an emergency clause. Following board bill was reported out of the Streets Committee, Board Bill 181, Committee Substitute, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance pertaining to street performers, repealing Ordinance 69167, repealing Section 24 and Section 25 of Ordinance 68604, and containing an emergency clause. That's the extent of our second reading.
We also have a couple other guests with us today, Todd Antoine and Lonnie Doran from Great Rivers Greenway. Let's give them a round of applause for everything they do. Thank you for all the stuff. And State Rep Hummel, I don't know if you heard earlier, but we really appreciate you, the work you do at the Capitol, and to your better half. We really appreciate you, keeping him engaged with everything he has to do in the city and all that stuff. All right, thank you. Thank you for coming down today. Dispense with line item 14, perfection consent calendar.
Board Bill 178, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to execute upon receipt of and in consideration a sum of $550 a quitclaim deed to Caressa Williams, certain city-owned property located in City Block 3736, property known by address 1215 Red Fox Lane. Board Bill 140, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute the Lambert Airport Space Permit AL-208 between the city and the Magic House and containing a severability and an emergency clause. Board Bill 141, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute the First Amendment to the operating agreement between the Lambert operating agreement to the Lambert Airport operating agreement AL-472 between the city and Concourse Communications St. Louis LLC, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 142, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute the Lambert Airport Vending Concession Agreement, AL-245, between the city and Advinco LLC, and containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 99, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 5314 Wilson, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 100, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4026 through 28 DeTonti redevelopment area and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 101, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3625 Russell and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 102, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2201 Missouri containing a severability clause. Board Bill 103, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, An ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3915 Utah containing a severability clause. Board Bill 128, sponsored by Alderman Conway. An ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4155 Shenandoah containing a severability clause. Board Bill 129, sponsored by Alderman Conway. An ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4045 through 47 Botanical containing a severability clause. Board Bill 130, sponsored by Alderman Conway. An ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4031 Shenandoah and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 131, sponsored by Alderman Villa. An ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 623 through 25 Holly Hills and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 133, committee substitute, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2809 McNair and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 134, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2526 California containing a severability clause. Board Bill 135, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4903 Lansdowne containing a severability clause. Board Bill 150, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 5546 Duke containing a severability clause. Board Bill 151, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2107 Lilly and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 152, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2313 Edwards containing a severability clause. Board Bill 153, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3727 McDonald containing a severability clause. Board Bill 154, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3731 McDonald containing a severability clause. Board Bill 155, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3801 McDonald and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 156, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3806 Wyoming and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 157, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4147 Wyoming and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 158, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3900 Utah containing a severability clause. Board Bill 159, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3900 Parker containing a severability clause. Board Bill 160, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3223 Magnolia containing a severability clause. Board Bill 161, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2927 Virginia containing a severability clause. Board Bill 162, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3321 Shenandoah containing a severability clause. Board Bill 163, sponsored by Alderman Ogilvy, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2144 McCausland containing a severability clause. Board Bill 164, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4006 Shenandoah containing a severability clause. Board Bill 165, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4920 Botanical containing a severability clause. Board Bill 166, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4022 Castleman containing a severability clause. Board Bill 167, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3828 Flagg containing a severability clause. Board Bill 168, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4024 Shaw containing a severability clause. Board Bill 169, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3525 Wyoming and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 170, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 2232 Thurman. Board Bill 172, committee substitute, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3307 Missouri and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 173, committee substitute, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 07 Salina and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 174, committee substitute sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3001 through 03 McNair and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 175, committee substitute sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2627 South 11th Street and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 176, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4237 Maryland and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 177, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for Hyde Park, Scattered Sites 5, and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 180, sponsored by Alderwoman Flowers, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 1600 through 1716 and 1601 through 07 North Broadway and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 186, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance recommended by the Port Authority Commission and the Board of Public Service, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to enter into operations and maintenance agreements by and among the Metropolitan Park and Recreation District doing business as the Great Rivers Greenway District and the City and the Port Authority and the City Arch River 2015 Foundation and containing an emergency clause. That's the extent of perfection consent.
Madam Clerk, please place Board Bill number 177 on the regular perfection calendar.
So noted.
Alderman from the 13th, you recognize on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I move for perfection of the aforementioned bills on the consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 13th, seconded by the Alderman from the 12th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries.
That's the extent of perfection consent.
Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize.
Oh, I'm sorry. Board Bill 177.
Which one? 177. He wants that one on there also? Okay, all right, cool. Board bills for perfection.
Board Bill 177, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for Hyde Park, Scattered Sites 5, and containing a severability clause.
Alderman from the 3rd, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill number 177.
Mr. President, I move for perfection of Board Bill 177.
Moved by the Alderman from the 3rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd. Alderman from the 3rd, please proceed.
The reason I took it off of the consent calendar, Mr. President, because what's going on over in Hyde Park is so much. We have more building permits issued over there than any other place in the city of St. Louis. And I think it's important that those people at one time who used to drive down Salisbury and they'd step on the gas because it looked so bad, they were in fear of their car getting hijacked and them getting robbed and the car taken away from them. But you go through there now, there has been a tremendous difference and there's a lot more coming. There have been more building permits and in the Hyde Park area than anywhere else in the entire city of St. Louis. And I'd like for people who hear me today, who are not totally satisfied with where they are, to come over into the Hyde Park area and look around, because that is a place where you would want to be. That Hyde Park area is coming to life and is doing so well, and one of the things about it, you don't have homeowners, prospective homeowners, sitting around. They will make sure that the front is clean, the alley is clean. People drive through there and throw trash out the window. These people go out there and pick it up. That's one of the cleanest areas around because people have bought into that. They believe in it. This is where they live. And I just think so much, thank the man so much, Miss Duffy, for listening to me, because I've been talking about this for years. All of you that have been on this board, you've heard me talk about Hyde Park and what it was going to be, and now it's beginning to happen. So I would greatly appreciate your support on Board Bill 177.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, I've been one of those people that have been listening to the aldermen talk about Hyde Park for a very long time. I actually have been down in Hyde Park rehabbing since 1979. So I've watched it. I remember when Hyde Park, Soulard, Lafayette Square was all supposed to advance at the same time. I remember when much of Hyde Park was in the 2nd Ward, and now it's mostly in the 3rd Ward. And I've had the aldermen on my case for years and years and years about do some more development down here and take me through Salisbury. Let me show you what I'm going to do. This is going to be this. This is going to be that. We have a building that we did many years ago, and he uses our building. He's used our building for years to show people this is what could be done. And actually, that is what is being done now. I am very impressed with what you're doing, Alderman Bosley. Salisbury indeed is a great place to drive down now, and to see the rehab instead of demolishing the buildings, to see the rehab that's going on makes my heart proud. I've been spending a considerable time down there because we do rehab there. And one of the things that he talks about, the neighborhood is so quiet. You can go there in the middle of the night. You can go in the middle of the day. It's quiet. The people, they have a long-term history of people who stayed. A lot of times in neighborhoods when blacks moved in, whites moved away. I want to give credit to the whites that stayed down in Hyde Park because they did not leave. They planted their foot and say, I live here, this is where I'm going to live. And so they've stayed. And so they are getting some of the benefits. Some of the blacks who've been there for a long time are getting some of the benefits. But every day that I drive around in Hyde Park, I see all of the improvements. And I actually do drive because I've been there since '79. So I just drive around. I'm very proud of the things. I'm proud of the festivals that you have, the things that you do in the park. I try to participate as much as possible because this is what happens when an alderman gets a long-term at the Board of Aldermen and you live in North St. Louis and you're really pushing to improve North St. Louis. And I'm very proud of it, and I want to congratulate you and hope that you stay here another 20 or 30 years to keep doing that because it is wonderful to see the turnaround.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 3rd, you recognize close.
I just would like to thank the alderman from the 1st because she's the first one that has ever echoed some of my concerns and wishes for that area. And I invite all these aldermen to come and drive through there. You may learn something about what it is that you might want to do. And let me just say about the Hyde Park area. It really symbolizes that it takes the black and white keys to play the Star-Spangled Banner. And whites and blacks over there, and they're looking at that color difference. They're looking at the neighborhood, where it's coming from, and the green that they're getting from the money that they're saving and that they're earning from those properties that we are working together with, making it happen over there. So I renew my motion.
It's been moved and been moved by the Alderman from the 3rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd, that we perfect Board Bill number 177. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
That's the extent of board bills for perfection.
Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to move for suspension of the rules for the purpose of moving the following board bills on a 3rd reading consent calendar. Board bills 178, 140, 141, 142, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 128, 129, 130, 133 committee substitute, 134, 135, 150, 151, 152, 153, 154, 155, 156, 157, 158, 159, 160, 161, 162, 163, 164, 165, 166, 167, 168, 169, 170, 172 committee substitute, 173 committee substitute, 174 committee substitute, 175 committee substitute, 176, 177, 180, and 186.
Moved by Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by Alderman from the 20th. Very good job, Alderman, by the way. Any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderwoman Young. Alderman Conway. Aye. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Aye. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Aye. Alderman Wessels. Aye. Alderwoman Howard. Aye. Alderwoman Florida. Aye. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Schmidt.
All right, I'm next.
Alderman French.
And I'll sign for Phyllis, too.
Alderman Boyd. Aye. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Aye. Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Ingracia.
Aye.
Alderman Ortman. Alderman Villa. Alderman Rhodey. 24 aye votes.
By your vote, you stay in the motion. Alderman from the 22nd, and move the aforementioned bills to the third reading consent calendar. Madam Clerk, third reading consent.
Board Bills 178, 140, 141, 142, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 128, 129, 130, 133, committee substitute 134, 135, 150, 151, 152, 153, 154, 155, 156, 157, 158, 159, 160, 161, 162, 163, 164, 165, 166, 167, 168, 169, 170, 172, committee substitute 173, committee substitute 174, committee substitute 175, committee substitute 176, 177, 180, and 186.
Alderman from the 13th, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I move for third reading and final passage of the aforementioned board bills and request previous roll.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 13th, seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Any discussion? There's been a request for previous roll. Hearing no objection, motion carries.
That's the extent of third reading consent.
We'll dispense with line item 18, report of enrollment.
Board Bills 178, 140, 141, 142, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 128, 129, 130, 133, committee substitute 134, 135, 150, 151, 152, 153, 154, 155, 156, 157, 158, 159, 160, 161, 162, 163, 164, 165, 166, 167, 168, 169, 170, 172, committee substitute 173, committee substitute 174, committee substitute 175, committee substitute 176, 177, 180, and 186.
All other business being suspended, the President shall in open session affix his signature hereto to the end that these may become law. Move for adoption of our courtesy resolution. Can I entertain a second on that motion? Seconded by the Alderman from 26. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. We dispense with line items 21 and 22, miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Tuesday, Housing Committee meeting, 10 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. Wednesday, Public Safety Committee meeting, 9 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. Also on Wednesday, a Housing Committee meeting, 10 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. Thursday, Health Committee meeting, 10 a.m. in the Leisure Room. Friday, full board meeting, 10 a.m. in the chambers. That's the extent of my announcement.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I would like to invite, most especially residents in the 19th Ward and those who live around Terry Park, which is Gate District, East and West, Compton Heights, and Midtown, to come to the groundbreaking on Monday, 3 p.m. for Terry Park's homes. The homes are being built by Vatterott. We're very excited. The price range starts at $170,000 and it goes up according to what your pocket can afford. So I'm happy to say that we have buyers already on board and they're moving forward fast for sale. So the groundbreaking is at 3 p.m. on this Monday. Thank you.
All right, any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 13th, you recognize on the motion, excuse.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to excuse the alderman from the 2nd, 4th, and 11th wards due to necessary absence.
Moved by the Alderman from 13th, seconded by the Alderman from 25th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Alderman from 13, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adjourn the meeting until Friday, 10 a.m., October 11th.
Moved by the Alderman from 13th, seconded by the Alderman from 26. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed. Stand adjourned.